I think that's it. So morning or afternoon. Great to see so many of you here. Really appreciate that. And please do, if you find my Clubhouse information useful, please do just ping 6 people who you might think might find this helpful, so that we can start sort of building things up. So I really appreciate that. If you could just ping a few people. I will not start pinging, because I've done that before and my whole thing fell apart. So I'm going to keep it as simple as I can this afternoon. And today I am talking about how to fish in a pond where no one else is fishing. So that might seem like a bit of a strange one, I suppose. But inherently, whenever I talk to people, whenever I'm coaching, whenever I'm kind of mentoring people, I find that everyone likes to do the same old stuff. And that can get really challenging. And I really feel for people, because there's so many things that we can do, isn't there? There's so many things that we want to do. And then lots of us have this, as it's called in the industry, and I'm sure it's in other industries, the shiny penny syndrome. Do raise your hand in the audience if anyone has had that. We have this kind of like, oh, that looks exciting, that looks good, oh, and we're all over the place thinking, oh, I'd love to do that. And inherently, suddenly 6 months later, a year down the line, we're kind of like, wow, that has been a really hard uphill struggle. And really what we want to do is to make it where we kind of remove that resistance. We want the easiest path to success. I got a lovely friend, Scott Weir, who runs Pillow Partners, and he talks an awful lot about this. And his business is based in Scotland, and anyone who's in Scotland will know that there've been a few issues in serviced accommodation recently with the licensing, and it just seems to be a little bit of a disaster. Nobody quite knows where they're standing. They're now taking, saying that the government are illegal. I think, well, even, Edinburgh, what they're doing is illegal. And, there's so much going on. So we can make 2 choices, can't we? We can sit and fight and maybe not move forward, or we can sit, I'm not saying don't stick up for yourselves, don't be proactive, but we can take that path of least resistance and look where you may be welcomed with open arms, where somebody may be there to support you to do those things. Now, for some people, and certainly for Scott and others, that's going abroad. So we see a lot of people, haven't we, at the moment, going over to Dubai, doing various sort of things like that. That's not for me. I've got a young family and I want to stay at home with being near my parents, being near my daughter's schools, and obviously being near all my kids. So for me, I'm not at that stage where I want to move abroad. I've been really fortunate. I've already done the expat life. But what can we do closer to home? What other things can we do to kind of fish in that pond where no one else is fishing? So I'm sure a lot of you have got loads and loads of ideas. So, do feel free to share any pointers in the chat, etc., etc. But really what I wanted to do is talk through one of the things I want to do is talk through I've got a wonderful friend, Jilly Barlow. If you don't know Jilly, please do look her up. She does fantastic courses on serviced accommodation and also on purchase lease options, which are just amazing. And certainly at the moment, purchase lease options are going to be coming back into themselves again with all of that is happening in the industry and interest rates and everything just going up and down here, there and everywhere. It just makes for a very uncertain climate, a very uncertain environment, which can be perfect for purchase lease options. So what I'm going to do is what Jilly talks about. She does this fantastic thing, and I've kind of taken it and then sort of added a bit of my own, is talking about sort of property strategy. And there are 3 different elements. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. But if you're not following me live, do not worry. I will explain it, as best I can as well. So where is that? And I'm going to be using my Remarkable. So let's just hope that all of this is working. Anyway, if anyone is watching this, do let me know, because that would be quite nice to know that I am doing this and it is working. But anyway, I'm just going to keep going. I'm sure it'll be fine. So as we can see, I've started off with just a blank piece of paper, and what this is we're talking about property strategy. So at the top, I'm just literally writing property strategy and this is for you. And then I'm splitting the page into 3 columns. And at the first column, I've got the strategy. It will be the strategy of finding property. In the middle column, it's the strategy of how you would acquire property. So remember here, I put acquire, not buy. And in the final column, very important, it's how to monetize our property that we have. So 3 columns. At the beginning, we've got finding. In the middle, we've got acquiring. And at the third column is monetizing. Can I just have somebody writing, yeah, here you fine in the chat box, just so that I've got you here? Be really great if I just had a little bit of interaction to know that I am there, but I'll keep going. So what we all do, don't we, is we go out, and when we start our property journey, or at any time, we tend to go out and find the properties first. So we jump on Rightmove, don't we? So if we look at different ways that, thanks, Tom. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Kathy. I really appreciate that. I'm feeling a bit blind as I'm doing this on my own today. Thank you. So the way to find property. So most of us look at, let's be fair, what do? We look at Rightmove. So I'm just writing Rightmove, Zoopla. We do networking. And of course, we go to agents. So those of you who can't see it, it's quite fortunate because my writing is fairly average here. So we do those, don't we? And that's what everyone does. So let's be fair, we are fishing in the pond where everyone is fishing, aren't we? Yeah. So that is what I'm talking about today, is how can we look at things in a different way, where we fish outside of the pond, where we fish where less people are. It might not be where no one else is fishing, but just remember, each of us in property has our own unique area, don't we? So generally, if I'm in, let's say, Kent, I might be in a town in Kent where I'm specifically doing, an apart hotel. Now, in my particular area, I don't think there's really anyone else doing that specific thing. So if I'm therefore looking for more apart hotels, or to do it more, I literally could be fishing in a pond where not many or no one else is fishing. So it's quite an interesting one. So what other ways can we go about finding property where other people aren't? So there's just really kind of obvious ones, and this is not exhaustive. So what I always recommend for people is to go off and do this, not on your own. Do it with 2 or 3 other people, because then it creates like a mastermind. And I am such a massive, huge fan of masterminding. I mastermind numerous times a week, because one head plus another head does not equal 2 heads. It literally equals about 6 or 7. The results that you get when you talk to a friend, let's say we talk through a problem, isn't it? And suddenly you come up with all these amazing ideas, and as long as we're open. So do go away and sort of mastermind this. But what else have we got? So, we've got kind of letters, leaflets, you can even just, knock on doors. There's so many things. Lots of people use tech now. So you could use Nimbus Maps. You've got property data. Really enjoy that one. Also, property filter. I absolutely love this one, and I will put in a little link to that one. I've got an affiliate link, and again, you get 15 days free, but I think it's blimmin' amazing. And property filter, you also get 15 days free. So what we're doing here is we're starting to look at places where perhaps less people are looking. Oh, there's also fantastic books. So I've got my VA to get me a load of links for you. This is also a great book by Mark Anson. I don't know if anyone else has read this. It is called Dominate Your Ground. It is a really fantastic book, and it basically covers off just lots of different ways that you can, so now I've lost where I am. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so lots of different ways that you can go and find property that isn't on Zoopla, that isn't on Rightmove, that isn't in all of, isn't with the agents. Now, I'm not dismissing any of those things. Absolutely, we should still be keeping an eye out and still be utilizing those, but inherently just remembering that absolutely everyone else is also looking at that. And especially, let's be fair, guys, that 3-bed terraced house, I mean, everyone is looking at that 3-bed terraced house, and they all want it to be BMV, they all want it to be a bit smelly, and they all want, and if you're working with investors, they're pretty much all wanting to do the same thing. And sometimes that means that the person with just the most money wins out, and that's not really where we want to be. So where we're at here is, I tend to say that you want to start off with about 5 different ways of finding property. Now, obviously, you've got 1 Rightmove, 2 Zoopla, 3 networking, 4 agents. And then think in that lower half where you've got all these different ideas of what you can do, think about, well, what can it be that we might be able to look at. So which one? So for me, I absolutely love letters. I've tried a lot of the other things. Leaflets just don't sit well with me. It takes me so long to create a leaflet, and then I get all a bit overwhelmed with who to sell it to and how to exactly get it into flats and it's all too overwhelming for me. I've done it. I don't really like it. But I also love using Property Filter. So what that does, that looks at motivated sellers. So inherently, one of the ones I was looking at last night, and one of the ones that I've created a letter for, is really interesting. So this person put a property on the market in, when would it have been? May of last year. For £120,000. Think it's a 1-bed, £120,000. And then they basically sold it, I think, around July time, let's say July, August, so really at the height of the market. And then it fell through, and then it came off the market. Okay, but normally when you're looking in Rightmove, you would have just presumed that sold. And by the way, they bought this property in 2017 for 90,000. It's come back on the market early this year, early 2023, at something crazy like, I can't remember, like 70, 80,000. And it's now currently at 65,000 on a modern auction. So these guys have got some major issues, but all we could see was that actually it came back on the market in February. So it's been on the market for a few months. But I know, with all this history that I've taken from Property Filter, I know that they're a highly motivated seller. They have literally been trying to sell now for, a year and a half. They're having a shocker. They paid 90 grand in 2017. They had it up for 120, thought they could sell it. Now the property market is fluctuating. We've got interest rates changing. We've got all these things happening. And, now they've literally taken the only route that obviously they feel able to, is pretty much selling it for half of what they thought they'd sold it for last year. And, 25 grand below what they paid for it, 5-6 years ago. So yeah, so they seem to be potentially motivated. So therefore I've creating a letter to send directly to them to say, look, I might be able to help you out. I might be able to give you a result quickly, because inherently what the problem is the uncertainty, isn't it? So if we can give certainty in uncertain times, people will be interested. Now, will every letter that I send out give me a result? Of course not. Absolutely not. And if we think that, guys, then we're absolutely, barking up the wrong tree. These are all numbers games. There's another thing that I say to people is, and this is so good for me, by the way, saying these things is so cathartic for myself as well. Inherently, what we do is we tend to measure ourselves on results. Okay, so it's like, oh, I bought this, or I've done that, or that deal's gone over the line. I've got a massive booking, so I have got a massive booking in at the moment. So that's a result. And it's like, woo, woo, woo. But what we forget is all those little activities that took us to get to these results. And it's a bit like, taking 25 years to become an overnight success. We have to measure ourselves on the activities, not on the results. So if we measure ourselves on sending out, let's say, 5 letters a week to highly motivated people, do we feel that within a couple of months we might start to get some traction? If you constantly, you know, had a way of sending out leaflets or doing various other things that other people are not doing, because let's be fair, most people just go on Rightmove, Zoopla. They don't necessarily know what they're looking for. They analyze here, there, and everywhere. They might have multiple areas, and nothing necessarily comes over. So the winners are the ones who measure their activities, and on top of that, especially with these kind of things, is they then follow up. So who of us, and I'm raising my hand here, who of us have contacted somebody and they've got back to you and then you haven't followed up? You know, I've done this. You know, you might have done it with investors. You might have done it with agents. You might have done it with here, there, and everywhere. And what it is us trying to move forward. How can we move forward in making that work for us? And a lot of it is, it's actually a mindset thing, and it is, you know, an organization thing. And I found that since I've been working on my mindset and listening to things like Earl Nightingale's narration of Think and Grow Rich, you can listen to it in 40 minutes. He constantly reminds us, what can you do better? What can you do to get yourself going forward? And I'm listening to that every single day to help me go forward. Now, am I perfect? Oh my gosh, sadly, I'm so not perfect in any way, shape, or form. I still do so many things wrong. But the fact that you're constantly looking and working at yourself and working out what it is I can do to change, to move forward. So anyway, I'm waffling on, but I hope this is interesting. So look at sort of 5 to 6 ways of finding property. But what we really want to look at with those ways is everyone looks at Rightmove, Zoopla, networking agents. Those extra ones. So let's say I now have my property filter and I'm sending letters out for potential purchase lease options. So what I then need to do is get that to a stage where I can where I can automate it. Okay, so what I've done is we now, and I'm, by the way, it's looking at all the things that you will create a bottleneck. So for some reason, I don't know what it is, but I am rubbish at posting letters. I don't know what it is. What it's a very odd thing, but honestly, it'll be so important and I'll want to post it and I'll find it, you know, a month later, muddy paws all over it, under the seat, and it won't have been posted. So I know that that's a bottleneck. So rather than fighting against that, there are things like doc mail, stamp, lots of other things where you literally have the letter, press a button and they print it out for you and they send it for you. Then I've got my virtual assistant. So what I'm in the process of doing is training her up on Property Filter so that she can just go, okay, boom, boom, boom. These are the ones. We've got a letter, a mail merge letter in place, because obviously with letters, for me, it's really important for them to be very, very personalized. So, you know, their address, all the details, past history, anything like that. And also you want to be looking like you're really professional, so having other things in there. So that enables you to kind of automate the whole process. So it may only mean that you need to look, you know, let's say 20 minutes, half an hour, go through your CRM that I use, which is in Property Filter. And then I just literally go boom, 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 boom. Okay, these are the ones that I need to follow up on. Just a quick look through. Yeah, they work out for me. And then I pass that on to my VA. She presses print and then they get sent out. So then it means that I can measure myself. So I can give myself a big gold star. Yay! Tick, tick. Those 5 letters have gone out. Now, obviously, I've got to be very careful that if and when the phone calls come in or the email comes in, then I follow up. And obviously, that's really key. But those, as I say, so 4 ways are what everyone does, those 5 to 6. So the next 2, make sure you really get on top of them. So for me, it's letters and Property Filter, and then really automate it so that you know that that's going to happen automatically every single week, so that you're actually building up that momentum. You're pushing that flywheel, as they call it. So I don't know about anyone else, but I really feel I'm still kind of really pushing hard on that flywheel. And we want to wait until we've had, you know, numerous times pushing and pushing and pushing, and then it starts to build that momentum up. Okay, so going back to this chart that I've got in front of us, so we've got the property strategy, we've got 3 columns, and this is by my lovely friend Julie Barlow. Finding is the first one, and then the second one is acquiring. So goodness, I mean, there's absolutely everything, isn't there? So we could have cash, we could have mortgages, we could have bridging, we could have JV funding, we could have rent to rent, couldn't we? That's a way of acquiring properties. Purchase lease option, purchase option, you know, it could be other people's money. There's just loads and loads and loads of different ways. There's actually, we've reckoned 49 ways is what we've done. You know, you can have exchange with delayed completion, you could have, you know, assisted sale. I mean, there's just literally so many. Okay, so acquiring a property is really interesting. So what we've seen here, haven't we, is you don't necessarily have to have your own money, you don't have to have cash in the bank, you don't even have to purchase it to be able to utilize that property. So I'm actually going to come back to this one in a minute, but this is a really fun one. If you can, go away, guys, and in your mastermind group, so you and your business partner, or you and a few others, you know, sit down for an hour and go through this, because it's a really interesting way of doing it. So then the final column in this 3 column is how to monetize this property. So what is your property strategy for monetizing? So, you know, I do serviced accommodation. You could do HMO, couldn't you? It might be that you do deal packaging. That is a way of monetizing property. You might do, I don't know, splitting titles. You might do, let's do lease extension. If anyone didn't watch or hasn't listened to my interview with Jason Patterson, he's the absolute king of lease extensions, and he's just awesome. So do go and have a look at that one. What else is there? I mean, gosh, there's just so many ways. You might do, you know, commercial to resi conversion. So again, you've got so many ways of doing things. But then for those of you who listened to my interview 2 weeks ago with Chris Dornan, he talked about very much finding that demand. So if you want to monetize your property, you've obviously got to know that there's a demand. So it's really, really key that actually what we look at is really looking at the demand first. And those of you who would know me, I talk a huge amount about having a gold mine area. So it's all about looking out there and how can you find that gold mine area. And I look at the gold mine area for serviced accommodation, because if you've got that demand, so let's say for us, if you know you've got a massive demand for serviced accommodation, then it's going to give you that confidence to then go and find that property. So if you've got serviced accommodation, you've found an area, you've got massive demand, you know which type of property as well. So let's say for you, you know, it is a 2-bed flat, you can, you know, do lots of them, or it might be you've seen an opportunity in 4 or 5-bed properties. There may be lots of big contractor groups coming into the area, or there may be, you know, whatever it is, you've found that that's an opportunity. And actually those bigger properties are cheaper because there's less competition. There's maybe less people fishing in that pot. Then you know the demand, the area. So then you can start finding. So then not only are you then being really specific in what you're looking for, you can really, really hone it down in a small area. And that's what Mark I. Anson does in Dominate Your Ground. It's really clever. There's one, I can't remember which one it is, but there's one particular strategy where he takes an ordnance survey map and he puts a 50p piece down. and that is the area that he goes and finds property. And what I tend to find is a lot of people are like, oh, you know, I want to go, you know, let's be fair, everyone thinks that their area is not a good area. You know, everyone thinks that grass is always greener, isn't it? There's always people that are more successful up north, more successful down south, more successful east, west, wherever. But I can assure you, wherever you live right now, there are people who are really successful property investors. And certainly you might think, oh no, but within 45 minutes to an hour of where you live, I mean, that's pretty much, even if you're in, you know, middle of London, there are places where you will be able to find great investment opportunities very much near you. So again, if you are looking at, let's say, a 50p piece coin size on the Ordnance Survey map, how knowledgeable do you think you are about that area? Do you think you would know the name of every single road? Do you think you would know the exact prices of those properties in those streets? You know, and do you think that everyone in those streets will maybe have a leaflet or a letter from you saying, if you're ever going to put your property up for sale, please call me first because I'm looking to buy in your area. And you could maybe give examples of other properties that you've bought in that area or that you manage in that area. So how powerful is that? That in your tiny little area, how many other people are going to be actively measuring themselves on activities? So they are going to be sending out, whether it's leaflets, letters, whatever route. I mean, I'm just mentioning those because I've written them down. But whatever route you take, they're taking consistent action every single month, every single week, every single day to understand and to learn about their area and to tell everyone in that area that they are looking to purchase or to acquire. And it is so, on top of that, you can imagine that you've got so many people that are now starting to understand and to know what it is that you're looking for, and therefore you're going to be the one really sort of sticking out like a Belisha beacon. Now, they might not necessarily go to you first. They might put it up on the you know, up onto Rightmove. They might put it up onto Zoopla. They might not. They might come to you first. But certainly if they're not selling, and at the moment, some things in some areas are becoming a bit stickier. So this could be a perfect opportunity for them to contact you, for them to, you know, to really know that you're somebody in that local area. And then on top of that, if you start doing all the things, so remember the 1 to 5, Rightmove, Zoopla, networking and agents, you will have, if you are buying in that area or acquiring in that area, you've got agents who know you're really serious. If you are networking in that area, you've got people who are really excited to want to know you, and you're going to be known in that area for all of these things. So it's, you know, it's a really, really great opportunity. So going back, so when you've got that demand and you are able to, you know, you've got that massive demand. So let's say, for instance, with serviced accommodation, you really can monetize it. You can then go and find that property. Once you know that you've got massive demand, you've then found that property, and you're very specific, aren't you? So going back, oh, that was a point that I missed out on. So yeah, so going back to looking up properties on Rightmove and being like we all do, we start off by finding property, don't we? And what we tend to do is we go, oh, that's interesting. That looks like it might be below market value. Oh, that one is an interesting one. That's been on the market a long time. That might be suitable for me. So we start analyzing all of these different deals, but we literally are almost starting all over with each deal. So this one's a 5-bed. Okay, well, I'm not quite sure what it is, you know, for 5 beds. So I'm going to have to do all my research. I might go into, I don't know, property data or all of these things. I need to look at that. I then need to look at the sold prices in Rightmove. I then need to do this and blah, blah, blah for the 5-bed. And, you know, oh, and what might that rent out at? So, you know, I'll need to check that. And what is the demand? Do you think there's a demand for a 5-bed? Gosh, I'm not sure that. Oh, that's quite a bit more rent than just say a 2-bed. But, you know, in comparison, actually, I get a lot more for my money. Might that work? So you've got all these questions, haven't you? And you start doing all of that, and it's in an area that you don't live near, so you're not quite so sure, is this in the dodgyville or is this actually okay? And so you're there wondering. So it takes you hours and hours potentially just to analyze one deal. And at the end of that, it's like, oh, actually, it's a really rubbish area, I've found out. And so I'm not going to do that. So you spent a long time. And then the next one, it might be, let's say, a 3-bed terraced house. And you are kind of like, okay, well, how does this work? And suddenly you've spent a few hours on it and it's already sold. So what we want to do is we really want to drill down on being so specific. So I've got a chap that I know, Kundran, I hope I'm saying his name right, and he is local, and he goes to a fantastic networking event run by Sunil Poppet in Sittingbourne in Kent. And what he does, he is so specific. He knows that he's got massive demand for HMOs in his particular area. And what he did is he did go and buy a very specific 3-bed terraced houses that had that kind of, when you walk in the front door and it immediately goes up the stairs, and then you've got the living room, and then you've got a back sort of dining room, and you've got an extension kitchen, and then the old loo right at the very back. And he basically went in, bought this property, converted it into, I can't remember, let's say a 5-bed HMO. And he decided, right, I'm going to do this, 3 or 4 times a year. So he started doing that. So he was very specific. He had, really tiny area that he wanted to do it in, and very specific the properties he was looking for. So by this point, you can imagine the agents, anytime that they had a property coming up for sale, they're straight on the phone to him. Do you want this? Do you want this? Because they could get their sale over the line so quickly, because inherently they want to get their commission, don't they? They want to get that over the line as quickly as they can. So then what he decided to do was, do you know what? This doing sort of 3 or 4 a year is not going to get me to my goal. I don't know what his goal is, but that's, what he said. And so what he then did is he started doing 2 at a time. And guess what? He's so specific on what he's looking for. And everyone knows he's so specific. So everyone knows that even if they've got a friend who says, oh, I'm thinking of selling off some of my properties, they'll go, boom, I know somebody who's really interested in buying that for you. So actually being so niche and being so much more specific is really, really key. Oh, yes, Dan, you got it, Daniel. Thanks. That's exactly right. So I just absolutely love that. And I love giving that kind of example that we think we need to be so big in what we're looking for, because we're so terrified that if we niche down too much, we're not going to find it. But again, in fact, what we do is we just waste all this time, effort, and we sometimes get deals. I'm not saying that we don't, but all I'm talking through is what could we do to increase our chances? What could we do? So exactly, Dan. So the strategy is, Kundan is looking to double his portfolio each year. I mean, that's quite tremendous. I mean, it's different if you've only got one, to double 1 to 2 is not that hard. But if you've got, 20 and you want to start doubling that, that's going to take some time and effort. But if you've got a very niche way and it works and you've got that demand, so remembering, going back, we've got this demand that enables us to find very specific properties. Okay, so then let's think about this. So going back to our strategy sheet, so we've got 3 columns: finding in the first one, acquiring in the second one, and monetizing in the third. So we've got our demand. We then know what we need to find. So we've got a specific property in a specific niche area, and we can really, really take loads and loads of consistent actions to then start getting us those leads coming in. So if we've got massive demands and we've found the property, do you think we're going to be able to acquire it somehow? If it's great demand and we found these great properties, we're going to be able to either fund it or acquire it. I mean, it just goes, without saying that this suddenly starts to have this real cyclical process of being able to find these properties and really start growing the business. Now, going back to what we talk about is this whole shiny penny syndrome. So a lot of people say things like this to me. Right. So I really want to do serviced accommodation, HMO, and deal packaging, and I'm going to do it rent to rent. And I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, Oh, that is a lot of knowledge. Because let's be fair, rent to rent on its own is, so if I've got my sheet here, so rent to rent on its own is quite a big amount of information to learn. I'd highly recommend that you do a course or you do something and get a lot of support, because you know there's a lot of legalities involved in that. There's a huge amount to learn. But let's say like I did, I started out with rent to rent, and I thought about service accommodation and I thought about HMO. But HMOs really frightened me. I'd heard terrible things about tenants. I also, if I bought a kind of virgin property and it didn't have the license and it didn't have everything ready, it meant I would have had to make, you know, physical changes, some refurb to that property, and that terrified me. So I thought, well, for me, I would just go for rent-to-rent serviced accommodation. But serviced accommodation on its own, I mean, I'm still, so how many years is it? 4.5 years later, I'm still learning constantly about serviced accommodation. I'm still learning new things. So if I'd have started out doing rent to rent to serviced accommodation, rent to rent to HMO, and also deal packaging, how do we reckon I may have done? So inherently, I'm completely diluting what I'm doing, because when we talk about finding the demand, so I'm going to be there going, okay, so I've probably got some demand for SA, and I need to, and that would be looking at booking.com and AirDNA and all those lovely areas, and looking at developments and maybe tourism and all of those kind of things. And then HMO, the demand for HMOs, we're going to be looking at open rent and, you know, and you know, what businesses are in the area. And, you know, so it's a totally different market. You're looking, you know, one are guests, the other is a tenant. And then on top of that, with deal packaging, well, inherently, the best way, as I understand it, I don't do deal packaging, but is to find an investor and then answer their needs. What do they want? What properties are they looking for? So again, you've got all these completely different things, and you then need to go and find those investors. So imagine going to a networking and you've got your 30 seconds to kind of tell them what you do. I mean, what would you say? Well, I do serviced accommodation, and then I'm looking for HMOs, and I'm looking for this, and I want houses here, and I maybe want them there, and then I also package it. And it's like, wow, that is just so too much. But we're so desperate to be successful that we literally we hold ourselves back. And by looking to do so many things, it actually ends up really diluting what we want to do. And again, we often don't get there. So my way to start is always start with your goal. And if that goal is, let's say, and most people that come in want this elusive figure, or I don't know why everyone wants it, but £10,000. I think, you know, inherently that'll cover your costs and also give you a really nice lifestyle. So if you've got £10,000, well, what might that be? Well, if you're doing serviced accommodation, you might need, 12 to 15 properties, for instance. You know, again, if you're doing HMOs, how many would you need? If you're doing deal packaging and you're making 3,000 per property, then that would be sort of 3 to 4 per month. So it would be looking at these different things, and that would start to work backwards. Well, what would I do? Which ones feel good to me? So for me, as I said, serviced accommodation, I love hospitality, I love business. So that resonated with me. So what I did is I spent literally the first pretty much 3 years just doing rent to rent serviced accommodation. And then when I wanted to do more and kind of grow more, I was always already, I mean, not an expert, but, you know, I knew a lot about serviced accommodation and able to talk in an expert fashion about it. So what did I do? I actually started to learn more about purchase lease options, but I still did it to serviced accommodation. So I wasn't completely starting with that snowball at the bottom of the hill and pushing it all the way back up the hill. I already had an awful lot of information there and an awful lot, you know, sort of going for me to learn that. And so, yeah. So guys, I hope that has been, I'm going to stop sharing now. Hold on and find you guys back here. But yeah, I hope this is kind of really helpful. I'd really wanted to just kind of share on starting off with finding that demand and looking at things that really resonate with us, and then going and doing this kind of finding, acquiring and monetizing and niching down, because so many of us want to do this huge sort of shiny penny syndrome, and we're all there going, oh, I could do that and I might do that, and then when a new deal comes across the line, when it's nothing to do with your new strategy, you can just say no thank you, or you can say, I know somebody who specifically works in that strategy, why don't you go and talk to them? And you might have, you know, if you do, you can do an introducer's fee or something like that, but you know, inherently stick to, you know, what we do ourselves, stick to what we enjoy the most ourselves. So guys, we have got quite a bit of time left, so please do raise your hand. I can't actually see if anyone has raised their hand, or pop some questions into the chat. If we haven't got any questions, I will sort of cut it off, because Rosabella is now on holiday now, so I've only got a couple more weeks of these before we actually take the summer off, because like all of us, we do this for a certain reason. As I started off with knowing your goal and your why, having that, my why is Rosabella and my two boys, Oscar and AJ, and spending time with them. So does anyone have any comments, any feedback? Does anyone want to jump up? I can see a lot of fabulous people in the audience, so please do let me know if anyone wants to say something. I can't see if anyone is even raising their hands. Is that something that I can see? Has anyone got anything they want to pop in the chat? And then I can answer that. Please do. Hello. I'll have a drink of water while you're thinking about it. Can't even see any hand raising. Has anyone raised your hand? Can you pop it in the chat if you are raising your hand? And oh, here we go. Oh, fantastic. So Mo's just come up. Do unmute yourself. Fantastic. Hey, Mo, how are you? I haven't spoken to you for ages. Oh. Can anyone hear Mo? Oh, can you speak, Mo?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Fantastic.
Hi everyone. Good afternoon. Well done, Emma. Yeah, just popping up. I actually was looking for the raise hand button, but I get it. I don't know why. I just pressed the unmute button and I jumped straight onto the stage. So I'm not sure.
I think this new, the new houses there, I don't really get it. I'm just kind of wading my way through. So yes, but you're on now, and great to hear from you. We haven't spoken for ages.
Yes. Yeah, I'm just I just decided to come up just to buttress what you're saying, because I remember my journey when I started as to do service accommodation as well. I was in the same network as you, Emma. So but you're in the mastermind now. But I remember having all this information and just thinking, where do I start? You know, like there's deal packaging, SA, rent to HMO, and all these things. So I wanted to start off actually to do HMO. And I got this property, and the thought of people, that's just me personally, the thought of people sharing bathroom just was like too much for me. I was like, how would like 3-4 people be sharing the same bathroom when they're not from the same family? So I quickly, after taking the property, I spoke to the landlord and said to him, please, can I change the use of this to service accommodation? And he agreed. So I used that property for a while, and then I gave it up because it wasn't really profiting. But one key thing that I've discovered in my journey is, like you said, Emma, is being focused in one thing at a time, and at least gain a bit of ground on that before you move on. I mean, the knowledge of everything else is there because I did all the training. I guess if any opportunity comes and it just comes to my table like easily, then I will use any of the other strategy. But in terms of focusing, I just decided to focus on SA more, which is really been good. I mean, you have the hops, the season, because it's a seasonal business. And of course, getting to maybe get some contractors, market and, relocation and all that. So I'm really getting to that point now where I feel like, okay, this is a bit steady. I've got good team. I've got like 2 companies dealing with my housekeeping. I've got a guy that does all my maintenance and all of that. And I feel like, okay, I have a bit more of time in my hand to explore other things. So I'm at that stage now where I'm thinking, okay, let me look at other aspects in terms of maybe below market value or any other thing out there, that could come up. But like you rightly said, and I agree totally, it's always best to focus on one particular strategy at first, because otherwise you can become jack of all trade. Like you're trying to do so many things and you end up mastering nothing. So that's just what I thought to say.
Oh, that's amazing, Mo, and so lovely, because I remember when you were literally sort of starting out, weren't you, with your 1 or 2, I think, when we first started chatting. So, really congratulations to move forward and to get this going, and to now be at the stage where, as we do, and especially as us, these are businesses, and they're, it's a growing business, and you might want to grow in a slightly different direction. And another thing to be aware of that has been really, really pivotal for me is inherently, and if you haven't listened to it, please do so, and do go and find me on YouTube, Emma Howitt, Pure Abodes. So the interview I did with Chris Dornan 2 weeks ago was talking about this sort of getting your cash flow going first, and that does tend to be very busy, very noisy businesses. So those of us who run serviced accommodation, we're there going, oh, this is happening and this is happening, and oh, the handle's fallen off, and oh, the dog has chewed whatever, and there's just so many things going on, and oh, they've complained that there's an eyelash on the floor. There's so much going on, and it's noisy, it's busy. And we can build up that business, but inherently just remember what our goals are and what our whys are. So if your goal was 10 grand and you've got a busy business that makes you £10,000, at that moment, stop and think, do I want to continue with this crazy busy business? Yeah. Or do I just want to nurture what I have and maybe now start, building up a portfolio of something that isn't as busy, isn't as noisy. Now, it may not have as much cash flow, but maybe you're happy with that because you're living a really nice life. You're having great things. So at that point, and that's really what Chris talked about, at that point, you might want to do, just, normal tenants, or you might want to do something more like I mentioned, Jason Patterson does with his short lease properties. He hands them over to a guaranteed rent sort of scheme, whatever that is. So again, he's making that choice that he's making a bit less money, but he makes mega money. So he doesn't really care. He wants to get to the stage where he's got a young child. He wants to spend that time with his family. So we have to really start working out, get that goal done with the cash flow. And it might be this really high, busy, loud business, but do you want that forever? And certainly for me, I don't want that forever. And in fact, we've got a big deal that's come back over the line. I was talking to my business partner yesterday, and in fact, I think he's in the audience, Yuri, and we were saying, what do we want to do with this? Do we want to SA all 36 apartments? Like, that makes me feel sick to the stomach. No, I don't. I have no interest in doing that because it would be so busy and so crazy. And potentially in that area, we would oversaturate the market as well. So do we want to, just doing, for instance, normal buy-to-lets, we'd still make mega money. So it's kind of like really understanding what it is that we do to go forward. So, I went off on a bit of a tangent there. So, and Grace has just said, so glad you're still learning. I've been doing this till 2013 and still learning too. Absolutely. Would you be title splitting on that deal? Absolutely done. You're definitely. So thanks for that feedback, Mo. I have just I'm aware of time, and we have got RS. Sorry to call you RS, but that's the name. Did you have something that you wanted to comment on as well? You'll have to unmute yourself. And also we've got Ray as well up here. I don't know if you wanted to unmute yourself.
Hi, I will do actually. I've kind of been up here the whole time, but I didn't even know. I don't know how to use it.
No, I don't know how to use these new houses. So I'm always really terrified when people come up. I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do with them. But thank you for waiting so patiently. I appreciate that.
So my question is, so I'm doing rent to rent serviced accommodation. I think partly my chosen strategies I work with kids in care that move into emergency accommodation. So I'm kind of in the industry already, but I'm partly on the fence because I'm going to have to do a lot of the work myself, in the sense of building a database of people to contact, because I don't know any management company that does this sort of work. I think my question is, I've also been looking at like serviced accommodation around hospitals. I'm in the Greater Manchester area. So there's lots of different demand for different people. So do you just go and is it better just get the property and then niche once you have the property? Or do you think it's better to have a clear plan before you jump?
I mean, everyone does it in different ways. But to have the safest route to market, and to have the, what was it called? Where there's least resistance, the path to least resistance, like we've been talking about. If you've got the demand, and let's say for you, it's emergency accommodation for children, and let's say it's for, I don't know, disruptive 15-year-olds, for instance, that is going to be a very specific property. So inherently, normally it would be, let's say, a 2-bedroom property or a 3-bed property where there's somebody who would have to come and stay with them 24/7. You also, I think it would have to be in, I don't know, I'm just guessing here, but in a certain area. It may need to have, I don't know, a garden. It may need to have various things. It may not be that they want them to be in a flat, or I don't know. But when you know that there's a massive demand for that, and let's be fair, it's not something that everyone is doing. So if you were to then go back and say to them, look, I've got that property, you've given me these 5 parameters that are needed to do. It's in the area that you suggested, it's this many bedrooms, it's got the garden, it's this and that, blah, 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 blah. And it's this price, which is what you said you wanted it for. Do you want it? I mean, they're just going to be saying yes. So for me, when you have the demand, you're just basically fulfilling. And then, okay, it may take you a while. So you mentioned about building a database. So this is all these actions, isn't it? These small actions. But imagine once you've created this database, of course, it's going to take a bit of time, effort, maybe even money to build up that database. But heck, how cool is that? You've got this database, and then you're just feeding the funnel because you've got so much demand. You know exactly what they want. So like any business, you're always going to need to create, the bucket, I suppose, aren't you? You're always going to have to fill that bucket up with knowledge and information. And then once it's overflowing, you've got, and then it might be that there's another provider who are like, wow, can you provide us with the same thing? Because we're so desperate for these, because of the massive demand, we're so desperate. So is it the right way? I'm not saying, if somebody does it in a different way, that's wrong. If we just look at kind of common sense and the path of least resistance, then that is what I'm suggesting.
Okay. Yeah, that's really helpful, because I think I can be a bit impatient with myself, and sometimes I want to just take the easier road.
Absolutely. And we're all kind of a bit entrepreneurial, aren't we? I am so impatient. I completely agree with you. It's like, I want to do this, I want to do this, and I want to do it all. I want to do everything. And we're like, but inherently, Do you want to fish in that pond where everyone else is fishing? So I would imagine, no disrespect, that Greater Manchester has probably got a very high amount of serviced accommodation providers. I don't know, but I would imagine you are fishing in a pond where there are loads of people who potentially have been doing it for years and years and years. Yeah, you've got loads of new people who are joining courses every single week, joining that, who maybe don't have as much experience but are going with management companies. So you've got a huge amount of people all fishing for the same clients. You've got a huge amount of people all fishing for pretty much the same type of properties. So do you want to be in that pond, or do you want to be in the pond that you've described, where there's just barely anyone fishing in there, and you've got these huge prizes? So you've got these just huge, big I don't know, carp fishing around, just desperate for somebody to pick them out. You don't even have to put a fishing line in. You can just literally scoop them up with a net. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. Because you are specific. So I'm not saying that the people doing SA in Greater Manchester are wrong. Of course not. There's definitely, I'm sure there's a need for it. But if they're competing, like I had somebody the other day who said to me, I need to change my management company because, I'm not getting any bookings. And I went and looked, and it was a Monday. On that Monday, there was 121 properties empty on booking.com. And I said to them, well, what do you think the other management company are going to do? You're competing against 121 other empty properties who are all like you. What is the management company going to do?
That's really helpful. Brilliant, thank you.
But we all know these things, don't we, Ray? It's kind of, we know it, but it's like you see that it's a bit of an uphill struggle. I'll have to do this, and I'll have to create that, and I'll have to do the other. So I think it's, it requires effort, and that's where it goes back to, let's measure ourselves on activities and not on results. So that may mean that you feel that you don't get any results for a couple of months, but that's fine, because you get the results from measuring the activity. So if the activity is building your database, then fantastic. Okay, you might not have a property for a few months, but don't put that as a bad thing. Just you'll build, like what I always talk about is building the foundation. So we wouldn't go into building a house without making really good foundations, would we?
No.
And it's exactly the same in business. And if any of you know Paul Merrick, and I've introduced, I interview him a lot, and he comes and helps me a lot. That is all he talks about, is running the business and finding the demand first, because it just makes the path much easier in the long term. Yeah. It's a bit like you have to work hard to not work hard.
Yes.
So it's doing all that, isn't it? It's like it's doing all that foundational stuff to eventually get there. Is it going to be an easy path? No, not necessarily. But is any path easy? Not really. Would you prefer to be there where people are knocking on your door saying, Ray, we need another property, and need another property? Or do you want to be with that other poor lady who's there going, why am I not getting any bookings?
Yeah, great. Thank you.
So I hope that's helpful. And that's really, yours is such a great example. So thank you so much for coming up here. You're in an area that inherently is probably, maybe oversaturated, maybe not, but let's be fair, the number of people that are coming through doing SA, you're going to have a lot of competition. So is it right to look at something else? Is it right to go, because it's very specialist? So that would make me think, wow, that could be really interesting.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you.
No, thank you. So RS has put, Ruth's here. Oh, fantastic. You've got a quick question on stats. Please unmute yourself, jump up. We've just got a couple of minutes. Go for it.
Hi there, Emma. Yeah, Ruth's here. Oh. Sorry, earlier I know you called me out, but I just couldn't work the mute button.
No, don't worry,
But
don't worry.
you can hear me, right?
Yeah, we can. Great to hear you. And thanks so much for sharing my stuff earlier. I really appreciate that.
Hey, no props. Thanks for the invite too. The question was, for your gold mine area, or for any area actually, what's the best way to acquire accurate real-time statistics for SA demand? And with your experience with Property Filter, would this bring that information up? Like they have that wonderful little map which shows Article 4 areas. So that was basically my question.
Amazing question. I've got the dogs barking in the background. So for me, I'm so passionate about this whole gold mine area thing, and finding it, and that is inherently because, like you say, people have potentially, done courses, and there is only so much that you can fit, into a course. Do you know what I mean? There's always going to be things that it's like, oh. So what I ended up doing is, in the process of coaching and mentoring people, I was just repeating the same stuff. Look, what I suggest you do is do this, 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 and this. So then I've created this this document, and I'll put it in here, but it's a good document, and lots of people have been really successful from it. But now what I'm doing is I'm writing a book, because you need so much more information. So when you talk about, where can you find statistics? Because it's interesting, everyone looks at different things. So would Property Filter give you the statistics of demand for serviced accommodation? No, absolutely not. What Property Filter would do is it will give you motivated sellers to find the properties that, as we spoke about earlier, you have already found the demand for. So as far as demand, I do it quite specifically. I like it to be close to your home, and I have not met anyone, and I've mentored, and coached hundreds and hundreds of people who I can't find them something local to them within an hour. Yeah. So, there's central London, but you can still go within an hour. And then what you want to do is, I like to find pockets of population, and I look at, say, 120,000. And I'm not saying just a town with 120,000. It might be a big town that's 500,000, but you want to look at that 120,000 where there's loads of growth, for instance. And people tend to just look at tourism. Tourism terrifies the life out of me, because you could be empty half the year. If it works and numbers stack for you to be empty, great. But if not, then we really want to, we want to fill it with other things. So lots of development. And then, and again, this comes from Nat and Greg from the Right Property Group. They talk about multiple and consistent streams of demand. So that's literally listing everything that brings somebody from out of town to that area. Now, it might be actors for the Panto. It might be wedding venues. It might be a huge wind turbine farm that they're building. It might be HS2. It might be loads of houses that are being built not by a local developer, but by an external one. It might be, film studios. It might be an Amazon. It might be so many different things, but you list absolutely everything that is bringing people into that area. And it, gosh, where do you find that out? So again, so many places. It may be that you have to go networking. You might go and talk to the FSB, Federation of Small Businesses. You might talk to the Chamber of Commerce. You might go to your local PWN, your local PIN meeting, and ask in those, what does people, locally, what's happening here? You would be driving around. You'd be going on the streets. You'd be speaking to agents. You'd be looking at what is in that area to bring people in. And then basically I just sort of talk you through that whole way. So a lot of people just go, that what they do is they look on AirDNA, which terrifies the living daylights out of me, because it's such a tiny portion of the market. It's like pretty much most places is less than 10%. So it's not a good representation. What else do? They then go and speak to the local management company. And obviously, if your property is being managed, it doesn't matter to them if it's empty or not. Now, a good management company obviously don't want it to be empty, but you know, they can just keep taking on properties and it doesn't really matter. So does this area work? They're going to say yes. Yeah, but it's your business. You've got to create those foundations. And the third one is they go to a deal sourcer or a deal packager, and they have their whole business on what those people say to them. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't people that are great, but it would be part of your overall foundation that we spoke about with Ray of working out, well, what works. Now, of course, I would definitely speak to deal packages. I definitely speak to management companies, and I definitely look at AirDNA, but it's part of a small part of a very big picture that will let me know that by the time I've got to the end of that, I'm going to feel 99% sure that it's going to work. I mean, I saw somebody in a group this morning say, oh, I'm taking on all these properties. I'm just going to give it a go. I'm sure it's going to work. I mean, that just really frightens me because I've seen so many people where it doesn't work. So yes, I hope that was helpful, Roots.
Yes, it was. It's just while you were saying that, interestingly, I just remembered. Well, I'm wondering how these brochures, you know, for off-plan developments, these Savills reports and that say, oh, there's such and such demand in such and such area, but you know, 30% demand or 100% demand. Just wondering how they work that out. Is there like a database, or is it just based on their experience around all the strategies and ways you just mentioned obtaining that information?
I mean, you'd have to ask them, and I'm sure if they're making such statements like that, there must be somewhere where they've shown that information and that data. But again, even if somebody else has told me, I'd be wanting to do my own research, because, you know, let's be fair, at the end of the day, if you're selling something, and I put that in inverted commas, if you're selling something, you're going to be selling, you know, the positives. Now, could it work? You know, with all of these, if all of these parameters in place, yes, it could work. But if you're, say, opening, you know, 20 new SA units in this one place, is it going to work? Is that going to oversaturate? So like I said, we're looking at a bigger deal. Would we open up the whole lot to SA? Absolutely not, because it would saturate the market and we'd be basically competing against ourselves.
Right. Yes.
And that's where Ray is doing so well, is because she's now looking at, okay, I'm in a big market. I'm maybe in a very saturated market. So what can I do? Going back to how we started, how can I fish in a pond where no one else is fishing? She's still offering potentially a similar product, but she's got a different demand. So it may be in that if you're taking on, you know, a brand new property and there's 20 others going on the market at the same time, if they're all looking at, I don't know, if they're all looking at contractors, or is there a small corporate interest? And again, I put a thing in the chat, where I put a link to a great book by Amelia Makosa. It's a shame she's put the date on it because it says 2020, but she does some really, really great marketing to corporate clients and finding corporate clients.
Right. Yes. And there's this one place, well, where I'm from, near Pinner, Harrowsides in London. I just can't find any stats for that area so that I can start doing SA for my currently owned BTL.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was just wondering how to do this, So
as I say, I've given you the link. So go and have a look through that, and then obviously do DM me if you've got any questions and stuff. But yeah, you just basically, you just work through it. You know, sometimes it's not a question of just, you know, there isn't necessarily the stats. It is that, like we spoke about with Ray, it is that annoying foundational stuff that you have to do, which is just a pain. You know, it is maybe looking in the local newspaper. It is going on the planning portal. It is, you know, maybe seeing if you could borrow somebody who's got, you know, a Barber ABI account. I wouldn't go and pay for that, by the way. You know, it's just by going and looking at all of these different things, but it's a pain. We so want, don't we? I've put this in Google. Tell me if my area will work for serviced accommodation. I'm afraid it's not that simple. We've got to put the work in.
Thank you very much, Emma.
It's like, that's really annoying. I wanted that easy response. I wanted ChatGPT to tell me, and he's not going to tell me, which is, or she, whoever ChatGPT is. Okay, like, we're really going to have to tie this up, guys. But I'm thinking that probably next week, I know that there are a lot of questions. So if we can all, so Grace has said, I'm looking at local council for planning for new developments. Great, really great idea. So guys, I'm going to do just a general sort of chat, sort of any questions that we've had on this, on all my kind of, interviews and things like that. And please, guys, also do let me know if there's anything specific that you want kind of help with, that I can go and find people to interview, because all of these people I'm interviewing, by the way, it is selfish for me as well, is I'm learning so much from them. So don't think that I'm interviewing and thinking that I know it all, because of course all of these people have just got such incredible knowledge. They've got such incredible unique experiences, and so that's what we're doing. So yeah, thank you everyone, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Oh, and before I forget, oh my gosh, I also do, as most of you know, that I do so much around mindset. I absolutely love it. So my Mind the Property interview tomorrow, which I only do once a month with my fantastic mindset coach Lee Rubeck, is tomorrow at 11:30. So I know we're going to be advertising that this afternoon, and that's all about how to overcome fear and procrastination. So, I never suffered from that, me, much. So if you want some help and direction on how to overcome fear and procrastination in your property journey, then please do join us tomorrow at 11. And as always, this will be on YouTube, probably later on today, and then we split it up into smaller like videos. So do come and find me, and do subscribe. I'm literally just now getting more subscribers than videos, so it would be nice if you could come and subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. Obviously only if you find this content useful. Okay, I'm going to be saying over and out now. Thank you. I've got some really lovely comments as well. I really appreciate that. And look forward to seeing you tomorrow and then next week, and then I think that will be pretty much me for the summer until September. Okay guys, thank you so much. Take care.